She weighed maybe 115 pounds. She was wearing a gray hoodie with a small bleach stain near the left pocket. Her backpack was the kind that college students buy at Target. Her sneakers were white once, maybe 2 years ago. She had a paperback stuffed into her side pocket. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the spine cracked and soft from what looked like 100 readings. She looked like someone's little sister. She looked like she should be worrying about midterms. She looked like the last person on earth who had any right to be wearing those dog tags. That was what Colonel James Hargrove thought when he saw them swinging from her neck in the security line at Denver International Airport, Gate Concourse C, on a Tuesday morning in November. He was wrong about almost everything that day, but he would not know that for another 47 minutes. Denver International Airport at 7:14 a.m. smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air and the particular anxiety of 100 people who were all going to be late for something. The security line for Concourse C stretched back past the Hudson News and the charging stations, coiling on itself in the patient misery of TSA. Overhead, a screen announced delays to Atlanta, Phoenix, and Seattle in orange text that nobody looked at. Maya Chin stood third from the front of the priority lane. She had not chosen the priority lane because she felt entitled to it. She had chosen it because the sign said military and first responders, and she qualified, and the main lane was 40 people deep, and she had a connection to catch. She had been awake for 31 hours. She had flown commercial from Ramstein Air Base in Germany to JFK, JFK to Denver, and she had not slept on either flight, because she had not been able to make herself feel safe enough to close her eyes in a pressurized metal tube full of strangers moving at 500 miles per hour at 35,000 feet. This was a relatively new problem. She was working on it. Her hoodie had shifted when she put her bag on the conveyor belt, and the dog tags had swung free, catching the flat fluorescent light of the security checkpoint. She did not notice when Colonel James Hargrove noticed them. She was focused on taking her sneakers off. Hargrove was 52 years old, 6 feet even, with the kind of broad, carefully maintained physique that came from a gym membership rather than field work. His uniform was immaculate, pressed so sharply the creases could have drawn blood, oak leaves gleaming, ribbons stacked in a precise tower on his left chest. He was the kind of officer who understood that the uniform was a communication. He had been communicating it for 30 years. He looked at the girl in the bleach-stained hoodie. He looked at the dog tags. He felt the particular, righteous anger of a man who believes he is defending something sacred. "Excuse me," he said. Maya did not look up. She was feeding her sneakers into a gray bin. "Excuse me." Louder this time. The word carrying the full weight of oak leaves and 30 years of people snapping to attention when he spoke. Maya looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, slightly bloodshot, and utterly calm. Not defiant. Not afraid. Just present. The way certain animals are present when they know where every exit is. "Those dog tags," Hargrove said. He pointed, because he liked the specificity of pointing, liked the way it made the object of his attention feel pinned. "Where did you get them?" Maya looked down at the tags for a moment, then back at him. "They're mine," she said. Her voice was quiet, not weak. Quiet the way a still room is quiet. The way a room is quiet when someone in it is paying very close attention. "Your name is on them?" "Yes." "And your service number?" "Yes." "And your branch?" She held his gaze. "Yes." Hargrove's jaw tightened. He had done 3 tours. One in Germany, one in South Korea, one at the Pentagon. He had never been to a combat zone. He had, however, developed over 30 years a very precise sense of what a soldier looked like, moved like, carried themselves like. And this girl, this child, 20 years old if she was a day, 5 feet 3 inches, 115 pounds in wet clothes, did not look like any soldier he had ever seen. She looked like she was waiting for her parents to pick her up. "Those are military-issue dog tags," he said, "with an active service number. I know what they are." "Do you know," Hargrove said, his voice dropping into the particular register he used for dressing down subordinates, "that impersonating a member of the United States military is a federal offense?" The security lane had slowed. People were watching. A man with a camera phone had it at his side, angled upward in a way that was probably recording. Maya Chin said nothing. She picked up her sneakers from the bin and sat down on the metal bench to put them back on. "I'm talking to you," Hargrove said. "I heard you," she said. "Then you'll stand when a superior officer is addressing you." She looked up at him again. Those bloodshot, absolutely calm eyes. You're not my superior officer, she said. Sir. The sir landed like a stone thrown into a pool. Technically correct, carrying its own complicated weight. Hargrove turned to his aide. Captain Brianna Voss was 29, competent, and carrying the carefully neutral expression of someone who had learned to survive proximity to Hargrove by expressing no opinions of her own until she was certain which opinion he held. She was holding her phone already, because she had learned that Hargrove preferred to have things documented. Call airport security, Hargrove said. Officer Derek Walsh had been working airport security at DIA for 4 years. Before that, he had spent 8 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, a Purple Heart he kept in a shoebox in his closet and never talked about. He was 38 years old. He had a daughter in 3rd grade who was currently obsessed with horses. He drank his coffee black and had strong opinions about stolen valor, because he had watched men he cared about come home broken from places nobody back home could find on a map, and the idea of someone wearing decorations they had not earned made him feel a specific species of cold fury. He heard about the situation in the priority security lane from dispatch at 7:19 a.m. and walked there in 90 seconds. By then there were 23 people watching. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb was among them. Webb was 31, broad-shouldered, with deployment patches on his sleeves that told a story, twice to Afghanistan, once to Syria, the kind of career that left marks. He was traveling home on leave, jeans and a t-shirt, his military ID in his wallet. He had heard stolen valor and walked over with the instinct of a man who considered this particular category of fraud a personal insult. He looked at the girl on the bench. He looked at the dog tags. He frowned. The call sign stamped on the lower tag was partially obscured by what appeared to be a dark brown stain. Webb knew what dried blood looked like. He had seen enough of it. His frown deepened, though he could not have said precisely why. Hargrove was in full performance by the time Walsh arrived. The audience had given him the thing he needed most: witnesses. Completely disrespectful to every man and woman who has actually served this country, Hargrove was saying. His voice carried beautifully in the hard-surface terminal. You want to wear those dog tags? Walk into a recruiter's office. Earn them. Maya had finished tying her sneakers. She sat with her backpack on her lap, hands folded over it, watching Hargrove with an expression that Walsh, in his professional assessment, could only describe as patient. Not upset, not humiliated. Patient, the way a person is patient when they have decided that the current situation, however unpleasant, is temporary and not worth the energy of emotional investment. It was, Walsh thought despite himself, a very strange expression for someone being publicly accused and filmed. Officer, Hargrove said, addressing Walsh with the confident authority of a man who assumed all public servants were essentially his subordinates. This young woman is in possession of military identification she is not entitled to. I want her detained for questioning. Walsh looked at the girl. Can I see the tags? He said. Maya looked at him for a moment. She seemed to be making a calculation. Then, without standing up, she lifted the chain from around her neck and held the tags out to him. Walsh took them. They were real. He knew the weight of real government-issue tags, the specific texture of the embossed letters, the way the chain moved. These were real. He turned them over in his hand. Chun Maya L. Service number, redacted in printing, stamped clearly in metal. Blood type, O negative. Religion, NO pref. And below the service information, where some soldiers stamped their unit designation or a personal call sign. 2 words stamped so hard the metal had deformed slightly around the letters. Ghost Orchid. Walsh went very still. The stain across the lower tag was dark brown, uneven, absorbed into the metal's surface the way blood absorbs when it has dried into something and been there long enough to become part of it. He stood there for a moment holding the tags. Well, Hargrove said, are you going to detain her or not? Walsh looked up slowly. He looked at Maya Chun sitting on the metal bench with her backpack in her lap, and her worn sneakers, and her bleach-stained hoodie, and her 31 hours of no sleep showing in the redness around her dark brown eyes. Ma'am, he said, I'm going to need you to come with me. Something crossed Maya's face. Not surprise, not protest. Something closer to the look of a person who expected exactly this, and had already decided how to handle it. Okay, she said. She stood up. She was exactly 5 feet 3 inches tall. Hargrove, at 6 feet, watched her rise, and felt the satisfying confirmation of a man whose assessment has been vindicated. Webb watched her stand and felt something he couldn't name, a prickling at the back of his neck, the particular animal awareness of a man who has been in enough dangerous places to know that threat and appearance are not always correlated. She walked with Walsh toward the security office without looking back. The man with the camera phone got the whole thing. It had 40,000 views before she reached the office door. The DIA security office for Concourse C was a room the size of a generous walk-in closet, containing 2 chairs, a desk, a computer terminal, and a motivational poster about teamwork that had been there since at least 2011. Walsh sat across from Maya Chun and put the dog tags on the desk between them. He had been doing this job for 4 years. He had detained a lot of people. He had a working theory about guilt that had expressed itself in motion, in words, in the desperate animation of someone trying to construct an acceptable reality out of words fast enough that the listener didn't notice the construction happening. Innocent people, in his experience, were often quietly furious. The wrongly accused tended to talk. They tended to want to explain. Maya Chin sat with her hands in her lap and said nothing. She was not performing composure. That was the thing. She was not holding herself together. She was simply still. The stillness of someone to whom waiting in a small room under scrutiny was not a distressing or unusual experience. Walsh said, "I need you to tell me your name, rank, and branch of service." Maya Lin Chun, she said. "Specialist. Army. Unit." A pause. Not the pause of someone thinking of a lie. The pause of someone deciding how much of a truth to offer. "I'm not at liberty to discuss my unit assignment." Walsh had heard that sentence before. He had said that sentence before. The specific phrasing, "not at liberty," was not civilian language. It was the language of a person who had been briefed on exactly what to say and what not to say. He looked at the dog tags again. At the call sign. Ghost Orchid. He had never personally known anyone who carried that call sign. But he had heard the name, once, 3 years ago, at a debrief at Fort Bragg when a retired Delta operator had mentioned it the way people mention things they're not supposed to mention, quickly, in passing, with the specific quality of someone who wanted the listener to understand the weight of the reference without having it on record. The Ghost Orchid mission was, officially, a training exercise in a non-disclosed location. Unofficially, it was the reason 7 American soldiers were alive today. Walsh said, "The blood on the tags." Maya looked at the tags. "Not mine," she said. "Whose?" She looked up at him. "I'm not at liberty to discuss that either." Walsh sat back in his chair. He was a good officer. He had good instincts, and he respected them even when they made his job complicated. His instincts right now were telling him something loud and uncomfortable. He pulled his computer keyboard toward him and typed in the service number from the tags. The database returned a result in 2 seconds. Classified. Tier 1 authorization required. Contact JSOC records 703 XXXXXX. Walsh stared at the screen. A specialist record didn't generate a JSOC block. A specialist record didn't generate any kind of classification block. Classification blocks in personnel records were reserved for a very narrow category of individuals whose assignments were so sensitive that even their service history constituted intelligence. Walsh had known 3 such people in his career. 2 of them had multiple combat deployments and gray in their hair. One of them had a drawer full of decorations he was not authorized to discuss. None of them had been 20 years old. He turned back to Maya Chun. "I'm going to make a phone call," he said. She nodded, as if this were the natural and expected next step, as if she had been waiting for him to arrive at it. Walsh stepped into the hallway. While Walsh was in the security office, Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb was standing near the gate and not going anywhere. He told himself he was waiting because his flight didn't board for another hour. He told himself he stayed because he wanted to see how this resolved. He told himself he stayed because stolen valor mattered, and he wanted to be present when the outcome confirmed what everyone had already decided. But the truth, which he was not quite ready to examine directly, was that the call sign on the dog tags was bothering him. He had not been close enough to read it clearly. He had seen 2 words and a stain and the specific physical property of real metal tags. He had been in the field long enough to know the difference between a fashion accessory and something that had lived in a deployment bag. He thought about the way she walked. Not the walk of someone performing military bearing. The walk of someone who had long ago stopped performing it and had simply absorbed it, The way certain postures become involuntary when you have spent enough years in a particular physical environment. Her eyes had moved over the terminal when she came off the escalator. A quick, systematic sweep that was not people watching. It was a habit. The habit of a person who, in other contexts, had needed to know immediately where every threat was. Webb had that habit. Every person he had served with had that habit. He had never seen it in a 20-year-old girl in a bleach-stained hoodie. He found Captain Voss standing near the gate, phone in hand, the carefully neutral expression replaced with something quieter and more uncertain. "Captain," he said. "The call sign on the tags. Did you see it?" Voss looked at him. A decision moved behind her eyes. "I saw it," she said. "Could you read it?" A longer pause. "Yes," she said. "And?" She looked at her phone. She looked back at him. "I ran the service number," she said, quietly enough that it didn't carry. "I have a contact in records." "What did it come back?" She showed him her phone. The message from her contact in records was 3 words long. "Do not proceed." Webb stood very still. He looked toward the security office hallway. He looked back at Voss. He thought about the girl's eyes, that quiet, systematic sweep of the terminal, and the way she had said "not at liberty" like someone who had sat through the briefing on what to say under exactly these circumstances. He thought about Hargrove, who was currently holding court near the gate for the benefit of the camera phones, performing righteous indignation for an audience of strangers. He thought about the 3 tours Hargrove had listed on his official biography, all of them in locations with electricity and running water and no incoming fire. A cold, crawling sensation moved up the back of his neck. "Captain," he said, "you need to tell him to stop." Voss looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Hargrove, expansive and confident and utterly certain before his audience. "I've tried," she said quietly. "He doesn't stop." Walsh stood in the hallway outside the security office and dialed a number he still had memorized from his time in the 75th. It rang twice. The man who answered was named Bobby Reyes, currently retired, previously a senior non-commissioned officer in a unit that Walsh was not going to name in a hallway in Denver International Airport. They had served together for 3 years. Reyes had contacts everywhere. Reyes was the person you called when you needed to know something that wasn't in any database a civilian could access. "Walsh," Reyes said, "you're not dead. Not yet. I need you to verify a call sign for me. Ghost Orchid. Army. Possibly Special Operations." The silence on the other end lasted 4 seconds. In Walsh's experience, 4 seconds of silence from Bobby Reyes meant something significant. "Where are you getting that?" Reyes said. His voice had changed. "I have a girl in a security office who is currently being accused of stolen valor by a JAG colonel with a grudge and a camera audience. The service number on her tags returned a JSOC block. The call sign is Ghost Orchid." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Walsh," Reyes said slowly. "What does she look like?" 20 years old. Asian American. 5'3", 115 pounds. Wearing a gray hoodie. Looks like she hasn't slept in 30 hours. She have a scar on her left forearm? Walsh thought about it. He had not been looking for scars. But there had been something. A faded edge of scar tissue visible under the pushed-up sleeve of her hoodie, thin and precise, the kind of scar that came from a blade or shrapnel at very close range. He had registered it without registering it, the way people register things in other people's faces that they file away without labeling. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I think she does." The silence this time was different. It was not the silence of thinking. It was the silence of someone choosing their next words very carefully. "Listen to me," Reyes said, "and do exactly what I'm about to tell you. Are you listening?" "Yeah." "Go back in there and return her property. Apologize. And then go find whoever started this. Because in about 20 minutes that situation is going to become the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened in that building. And you want to be on the right side of it before it does." Walsh stared at the motivational poster on the wall across the hallway. "Bobby," he said. "Who is she?" A long breath on the other end of the line. "You know the Ghost Orchid op?" Reyes said. "Heard it mentioned once. Classified training exercise 3 years ago." "It wasn't a training exercise," Reyes said. "And it wasn't 3 years ago. It was 14 months ago. 6 operators went in. 3 of them came out breathing because someone pulled them out of a vehicle that was on fire from a direct RPG hit. That someone went back in twice. She was 17 years old at the time." Walsh's hand tightened on the phone. "The blood on the tags," he said, "belongs to one of the 3 she pulled out," Reyes said. She won't clean it off. I don't know if that's for her or for him, but she won't clean it off. A pause. Walsh. She got the Medal of Honor. It's sealed. You'll never see it in a press release. You'll never see her in a parade. But she got it. She's the youngest woman in history to receive it, and she looks like a college student, and I need you to go back in there right now and fix this before her CO finds out it happened, because her CO is going to be significantly unhappy. Walsh lowered the phone. He looked at the door of the security office. He thought about the girl on the bench in the bleach-stained hoodie, sitting with her hands folded over her backpack, patient and bloodshot and 31 hours without sleep, not defending herself, not protesting, not explaining, just waiting for the situation to resolve itself because she understood, probably better than anyone else in the building, that the truth did not require her assistance in order to be true. He went back inside. Maya was still sitting exactly where he had left her. Walsh sat down across from her and put the dog tags on the desk and slid them toward her. She looked at them. She looked at him. He said, "I owe you an apology." She picked up the tags and put them back around her neck. She said nothing. "The colonel outside is going to need to be dealt with," Walsh said, "and I want to do that correctly. Can I ask you, is there a contact number I should be calling? Someone from your unit." Maya was quiet for a moment. "My CO is aware of my travel," she said. "I would imagine she's been notified of the situation already." Walsh thought about that. By who? For the first time, something flickered in Maya's expression, not quite amusement, not quite the opposite. Something between. "The airport's security systems flag detentions of certain personnel automatically," she said. "It's a protocol." She paused. "I didn't design the protocol." Walsh stared at her. "So right now," he said carefully, "your commanding officer is aware that you have been detained." "Likely yes. And she is." "Probably making a phone call," Maya said. "She makes very precise phone calls." Walsh stood up. He suddenly needed to be back in the main terminal. He needed to see Hargrove's face when that phone call arrived. "You can wait here if you'd like," he said. "Or you can come with me." Maya stood up. She put her backpack on. She tucked the Marcus Aurelius paperback more securely into the side pocket. "I'll come," she said. At 7:52 a.m., the desk phone in Denver International Airport's operations management office rang. Elaine Porter, the airport's operations manager, picked it up on the second ring. 46 years old, 22 years in airport management, she had handled evacuations, bomb threats, medical emergencies, and a situation in 2019 involving a live goat in Terminal B that she still could not fully explain. She was not a person easily rattled. The voice on the other end of the line rattled her. "This is General Patricia Donovan, Joint Special Operations Command. I understand one of my personnel is currently being detained in Concourse C. I'd like to speak with whoever authorized the detention and with the individual responsible for initiating the confrontation. I will be on this line for the next 10 minutes. Please do not waste them." The voice was the particular voice of someone who had given orders in extremely high-pressure situations for a very long time, and had consequently reduced all communication to its essential load-bearing elements, stripped of everything courteous or unnecessary. It was the voice of someone who was not angry in the way ordinary people are angry, but was instead operating in a state of extremely focused and purposeful displeasure. Elaine Porter said, "Yes, General." "One moment." She picked up her radio. The terminal had not fully dispersed. Events like this one, confrontation, accusation, the particular drama of someone in authority asserting themselves against someone who seemed not to have any, tended to linger in crowd memory. People had stayed in the general area. The video had already crossed 100,000 views. Someone had captioned it "Airport Cop Arrests Tiny Girl for Stolen Valor, LMDolo," and the comments were not generous. Walsh came back into the main terminal area with Maya Chun walking beside him. She was exactly 4 inches shorter than him and walked with a quality he had not fully catalogued before and now could not stop seeing. The absolute, unconscious economy of someone who had learned that wasted movement in confined spaces can get you killed. She wasn't military marching. She wasn't performing anything. She just moved through the space as if she understood it completely. Hargrove saw them coming, and his expression reset into the configuration of victorious authority. "Good," he said. "I hope you've gotten to the bottom of this." "I have," Walsh said. Webb was standing 15 feet away. He was watching Maya Chun the way you watch something you're trying to categorize. His arms were crossed over his chest. His expression had the quality of a man who has already privately arrived at an uncomfortable conclusion and is waiting for external confirmation. Voss was standing slightly apart from Hargrove. Her phone was in her hand. She looked at Maya Chun and then looked away. Walsh said, "Colonel, I'm going to ask you to stop discussing this situation publicly." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I believe you have made a serious error, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to address it privately before." "I haven't made any error," Hargrove said, and his voice had risen slightly, performing for the cameras that were still out, because the cameras were the point. The cameras were the record of his righteousness, the proof he could carry. "This young woman is wearing stolen military property, and I reported it appropriately. If you've spoken to her, and she's maintained her story." Elaine Porter appeared at Walsh's shoulder, slightly out of breath. "Officer Walsh," she said, "I have the airport's operations line. There's a call for," she glanced at her notepad, "Colonel Hargrove, and the officer responsible for the detention, and—" She looked at Maya Chun, and something in her expression softened slightly. "And this young lady, if she's willing." "Who's calling?" Hargrove said. Elaine Porter looked at her notepad again. "General Patricia Donovan, GSOC." The silence that followed was the particular silence of a public space when something unexpected has broken through the social surface. Hargrove's expression did not change immediately. His brain was processing, recalibrating, running through possible frameworks in which this information made sense within his existing model of the situation. It took approximately 3 seconds for the frameworks to exhaust themselves. He said, "JSOC. Yes, sir. Joint Special Operations Command. Yes, sir." He looked at Maya Chun. She was looking at the departures board. The call was put on speakerphone at the operations desk because there was no conference room available, and General Patricia Donovan, Walsh suspected, had anticipated this and did not mind. Witnesses served a purpose. "Colonel Hargrove," the general said. "General." His voice, Walsh noted, had undergone a significant transformation. The performance register was gone. What remained was something more cautious and more small. "I want to make sure I understand the situation correctly," the general said. "You observed a young woman wearing military dog tags in a civilian airport and made the determination, based on her appearance, that she was engaged in stolen valor. You then publicly accused her, drew a crowd, filmed it, and had her detained by airport security. Is that accurate?" A pause. "I observed what appeared to be." "Colonel, I'm not asking for your interpretation. I'm asking if the facts I described are accurate." "Yes, General." "Good. Let me tell you about the person you accused." The general's voice did not change its quality. It remained flat and precise and entirely without the theatricality of anger. This was, Walsh thought, significantly more frightening than shouting would have been. "Specialist Maya Lin-Chin entered service at 17 under a provision that I personally authorized. She completed special operations selection at 18, at which point she was the youngest candidate to pass selection in the history of the program, and the first female to complete it in the current framework. She was assigned to a classified direct action unit 14 months ago. During her third operational deployment, her vehicle was struck by an RPG in a narrow corridor in a location I am not going to name on this call. 3 members of her team were incapacitated. The vehicle was on fire. Specialist Chun exited the vehicle, extracted 3 personnel under sustained direct fire, re-entered the burning vehicle twice, and was the last person out before the ammunition cooked off." A pause. "She sustained a blade wound to her left forearm from shrapnel during the second extraction. She declined medical attention until all 3 of her teammates had been treated. One of them did not survive transport. The blood on her dog tags belongs to him. His name was Sergeant First Class Daniel Park, and he asked her, during transport, not to clean them. She has not cleaned them." The operations desk was very quiet. Someone in the small crowd that had followed them in was crying, though Walsh could not identify who. "Specialist Chun was awarded the Medal of Honor for her actions on that day," the general continued. "The award is sealed. She did not ask for it to be sealed. It was sealed because the operation did not officially occur, and because Specialist Chun expressed, and I quote, a preference not to be treated differently. I would like you to reflect on how that preference has worked out this morning, Colonel." Hargrove said nothing. "The dog tags are genuine," the general said. "The call sign Ghost Orchid is genuine. The service record is genuine. All of it is genuine. The only thing in that airport this morning that was not genuine was your certainty. Another pause. I am going to send a formal inquiry to your commanding officer regarding this incident. The videos that are currently circulating on social media will be included in that inquiry. I trust you understand the implications. Do you have any questions? No, General. Specialist Chun, are you on the line? Maya leaned forward slightly. Yes, ma'am. Are you injured? Do you need anything? No, ma'am. I have a connection to catch. Yes, you do. I'll let you go. A breath, the first human-sounding thing in the entire call. You did well, Maya. Thank you, ma'am. The line disconnected. The room was not silent for long. It was Webb who moved first. He stepped forward, past Hargrove, past Voss, and stopped in front of Maya Chun. He was 6'2" and broad, and he stood in front of a 20-year-old girl in a bleach-stained hoodie, and his face had the expression of a man who has just understood something about himself that he will spend a long time thinking about. Specialist, he said, I owe you an apology. Maya looked at him. You didn't say anything, she said. It was not defensive. It was simply a fact. I stood there, he said. I watched it. I had doubts and I stood there. He met her eyes. That's not good enough. She looked at him for a moment. You stayed, she said. Most people wouldn't have stayed. He wasn't sure that was forgiveness. He wasn't sure it needed to be. He stepped back. Hargrove had not moved. He was standing in the particular stillness of a man whose internal architecture has been destroyed and who has not yet decided what to replace it with. 30 years. 30 years of being right in rooms. Of the uniform communicating everything it needed to communicate. Of size and rank and certainty carrying him through every situation he had ever encountered. He had looked at a girl in a gray hoodie. He had decided what she was. He had been catastrophically, publicly, irretrievably wrong. He opened his mouth. Walsh, who had been watching him with the careful attention of a man who has learned that the moment after a powerful person's humiliation is unpredictable, waited to see what would come out. I was acting in the interest of Colonel, Walsh said, and his voice was not unkind, which was worse in some ways than unkindness. I think that's probably enough for right now. Voss had her hand over her mouth. Not grief, Walsh thought. The expression of someone who had seen this coming and had not been able to prevent it and was not sure how to process the collision of those two facts. The small crowd in the operations doorway had phones out. More footage. More documentation. 47 minutes ago, the footage had been of a young girl being humiliated by a man in uniform. The framing of every new piece of footage would be different. Walsh thought about what Reyes had said on the phone. You want to be on the right side of it before it does. He walked over to Maya Chun. Specialist, he said, I believe you have a connection to catch. Can I walk you to your gate? She looked at him. She had been standing through the entire preceding 5 minutes with the same quality of stillness she had shown in the security office. Not cold, not performative, just present, letting the situation resolve itself around her without requiring her active participation in its resolution. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, Walsh said. I'd like to. Something in her expression shifted. Not the sharp, bounded thing she had been showing since the security line, something quieter, more tired, more human. Okay, she said. Gate C-17 was a 20-minute walk through Concourse C, past the Hudson News and the Jamba Juice and the rows of charging stations and the particular suspended animation quality of a terminal full of people between places. Walsh walked beside her. He did not ask her about the operation. He did not ask her about the Medal of Honor. He did not ask her about Sergeant First Class Daniel Park, or the blood on the tags, or what it felt like to be 20 years old and carrying those particular weights through a civilian airport. He said, You're going home? Visiting, she said. My sister. She's at CU Denver. Younger. 19. A pause. She doesn't know about most of it. The deployments. She knows I'm in the Army. Walsh nodded. My daughter is 8, he said. She wants a horse. Maya glanced at him sideways. Will you get her one? On an airport cop's salary? He made a sound that was almost a laugh. I'm thinking about a very horse-shaped dog. She smiled. It was the first real smile she had given since the security line, and it rearranged her face entirely. She looked, suddenly and completely, like what she was, a 20-year-old person who had done extraordinary things and was extraordinarily tired and was on her way to see her little sister. She looked like someone who, in a parallel life, would be worrying about midterms. They arrived at Gate C-17. The board said Denver, Portland, boarding in 35 minutes. Walsh stopped at the gate entrance. Specialist, he said. For whatever it's worth, from someone who's been there, in different ways, what you did. It matters. Even when nobody knows. She looked at him for a moment. The dog tags were visible again at the neck of the hoodie, the lower one with its dark stain. I know, she said quietly. She looked across the gate toward the arrivals hall visible through the terminal glass. Walsh followed her gaze. There was a girl standing at the arrivals barrier, 19, dark-haired, small, wearing a CU Denver hoodie, scanning the gates with the anxious, searching energy of someone who has been waiting and is not good at waiting. She spotted Maya. The expression that broke across her face was the expression of someone for whom a specific anxiety that has lived in them for a long time has suddenly, with no warning, been relieved. She started walking fast, then faster. Walsh watched Maya Chen's face change, watched the last of the stillness dissolve, watched 20 years old reassemble itself fully in her features. She walked toward her sister. Walsh stood at the gate for a moment. Then he turned and walked back through Concourse C, past the Hudson News and the Jamba Juice and the charging stations and the departures boards, back toward the security office where the paperwork for the morning's events was waiting for him. Events that would be, he was already certain, the most complicated report he had ever filed in 4 years of airport work. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for walking her to the gate. Donovan. He stood still for a moment in the middle of the terminal. Then he put the phone in his pocket and kept walking. 47 minutes after it had begun, 6,000 miles of footage were circulating on social media. The title on the most shared version read, Airport Cop Tries to Arrest 20-year-old for Stolen Valor. Then they ran the dog tags. It had 14 million views by nightfall. Colonel James Hargrove's formal inquiry was filed within 72 hours. He retired 4 months later. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb mailed a letter to a Pentagon address he had found through unofficial channels. He never received a reply, but 3 weeks later, his application for Special Operations Selection, the third he had submitted, was approved. Maya Chen spent 6 days in Denver with her sister. They hiked in Rocky Mountain National Park. They watched 2 movies. They ate an embarrassing quantity of Thai food. She was back on a plane to Germany on the 7th day. She didn't clean the dog tags.